Hi everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, I might be a little under the weather, but the show must go on. Welcome everyone inside the plant room on a nice Monday morning. Not so nice for me, but we're in the 30s for the morning, so the temperatures have moved back up, which is good. But I had a weekend where I felt a little bit under the weather. And so when you work at a school and you're a teacher and you're around students every day, a lot of germs flying around this time of year, and yeah, something got the best of me. And if you know me at all, I don't sit still very well. So yesterday, though I didn't move around a lot, I was at the computer working on one of my last videos from the road trip of this past summer. So the East of the Mississippi Bonsai Tour, boy, I had such a blast. And if I haven't said it enough, I'll say it again. Make sure you give yourself plenty of time at all of these locations. And this one is no different. So a couple years ago, I met Tim Cox of the West Michigan Bonsai Club. And if you want to watch his video, he and I sat down and chatted a couple years ago when I went over to Canada, stopped in Michigan on the way. So Tim Cox's video is right over here. Check out Tim's collection. He and I had a chance to chat. And so finally, 2 years later, per his suggestion, Dave, you got to go see the Frederik Meijer Sculpture Gardens and Bonsai collection. So this road trip, I got to go to Frederik Meijer. So go check it out. They have some of the most amazing sculptures around this garden and, of course, some tremendous bonsai. So I met a few folks out there. So Dean Bull is one of the guys who comes to the Frederik Meijer Bonsai Collection and helps Ted Bentley out from time to time. You know, 20, 25 times a year, he's there looking at the bonsai and working on the trees with Ted. So I got a chance to meet both Dean and Ted. And again, a shout out to Aaron who helped shoot this episode. I couldn't have had so much fun just yapping up bonsai without Aaron taking care of the camera work. So let's go check out the Frederik Meijer Sculpture Garden and the bonsai there, and some great people again that took the time to just share all their expertise and knowledge. I hope you enjoy. We got kind of the back 40 here. What's going on with back here?
Well, this is where we keep the trees that are not on display.
Yeah. Getting ready for display, some touch-ups, fix-ups.
Yes. The stuff that's out in the Japanese garden is more displayable than these guys, and for various reasons.
I was just going to say, a couple of reasons that you're making that decision. If it's not ready to be out there, it's because, what, it's not as trimmed as like you want it to be?
Yeah, either it's not absolutely gorgeous this year.
Yeah, sure.
Or it needs some trimming and just waiting for it, or also just having enough trees to rotate them in and out.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, we want the guests to come here once a week. Yeah. And not just see the same trees over and over again.
So. Yeah. When I was at Chicago Botanical, they have 60 trees on display, but 300 in their collection. And so,
and you got to have that.
You have to, right, to have a good collection and have. Man, I'd be here every week, I tell you that much. Oh, wow, look at this monster. Do you know the story of every one of these trees? No, I don't want the 20-minute version. The abridged would be good, but there's a story here.
Bruce Baker.
Bruce Baker.
This is Goliath.
Is it? I've heard of the
his YouTube channel, he tells the whole story about Goliath.
Okay.
It's quite a story.
And it looks to be a Taxus.
It is a Taxus cuspidata, yes.
Okay. Wow.
But he did all the carving on it. It took him, I think it took him 12 years to get it into a pot.
Really?
Yeah. It weighed about 600 pounds when he first collected it. Yamadori, urban Yamadori.
Urban Yamadori, because I can't see someone pulling on a tree like that up on the mountains. So,
no,
holy cow.
He ruined a bobcat trying to get it out of the ground. That's all in the YouTube video.
In the YouTube video, yeah.
But then he hired a wrecker.
Okay.
To pull it out of the ground.
Okay.
The guy spent the whole day trying to get that damn thing out of the ground.
Out of the ground.
Charged him $50.
Really?
Yeah, because he told him ahead of time, that's what I'll charge you. But it
But he
was
spent the whole
it
day.
was a wrecker that is the size of a semi-tractor.
Oh my word!
One of those.
For $50.
Yeah, and it did succeed at pulling that that thing out of the ground.
This has got such a wide base, goes right to the edges. How often is this one repotted now?
We don't know yet.
Oh,
Bruce died in January.
oh, that's
He was my
unfortunate.
dear friend for 33 years.
I'm sorry
He was,
for that loss.
Thank you. He was my primary bonsai mentor for all that time.
All that-
I knew very little about bonsai when I met him, and he took me under his wing.
He was your guy.
He was my guy.
Okay.
And the man was talented beyond anything I can tell you about.
Yeah.
I referred to him as the Billy Joel of bonsai.
Oh,
He was that damn talented.
that's phenomenal.
Um,
And this is
and
maybe
he,
his piano
He never
man.
did finish carving it, but
Yeah.
that's part of my job is to finish that
To
up.
finish that up, yeah.
Pinus flexilis, limber pine.
A limber pine?
Limber. I don't know how old this is, but you know, that kind of deadwood,
Yeah.
that takes more than a couple of months. The pot
Yeah.
is what I call my Barney Rubble style pot.
That is.
I made it. But if you Google my name and Barney Rubble's name, you'll see my
Same image?
article that I wrote about
About-
this concept. Yeah.
That's awesome.
The original, the first one I made is on display in the Japanese garden.
Okay. The slate pot.
It's actually New York, this is New York multicolor.
All right.
Many of them are what is called New York bluestone,
Yeah, okay.
which is about this color.
Yeah.
And I think they call it bluestone because it's green. And you can quote me on that.
Well, someone's colorblind.
Well, duh.
Someone is colorblind. Bruce was your mentor. Are you a more traditionalist style, or are you a more natural style bonsai? Would you have a preference with what you've done over the bonsai stuff? He's looking at him and laughing.
I'm wondering how Ted would describe me in that respect.
Ah. More traditionalist, or a little bit more naturalistic?
I would say more natural.
Yeah.
I think Dean definitely goes more natural.
I think
style.
you're being way too kind. Bonsai blasphemy is probably more.
Blasphemy. Somewhere in the middle of all that.
Yeah.
You like what nature is doing to it, and you kind of work with it that way.
Yeah.
And I'm not real concerned about what somebody else thinks about it.
Yeah.
You either like it or you don't. And if you don't like it, look away. Go someplace else. Look at somebody else's trees.
There
Don't
you
look
go.
at mine.
And we've been talking about that with people I've talked about. It's it's just like, again, paintings on a wall. You might not be a Picasso fan, you might not be a Rembrandt fan. They're all artists doing their thing, and you're an artist, and you may do something a little different than someone else.
Exactly.
So, yeah, if you don't like it, go to the next tree.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I started here in 2001.
Okay.
This tree was in the cooler, winter storage,
Uh-huh.
and it was destined to be used as a landscape tree out by one of the
Oh, really?
things. And this and one other, I'll show you the other one's in the garden with the Barney Rubble pot. It's also a ponderosa pine.
Okay.
And I saw the two trees in very, very rough condition,
Yeah.
just collected material. And Steve, my brand new boss, he said, these are going to be used in the landscape. And I looked at him and I got his eye contact and I said, Steve, no. No, these are not landscape
We're not
trees.
putting these in the ground.
Whatever your plan was, change it.
Change the
These are bonsai trees. And I got a plan for both of them. And that was the fundamental basis for his and my friendship.
Yeah.
And so we talked to the powers that be, and we got access to the trees.
Yeah.
And here you are. Your man just said is one of the nicest
Yeah.
literati style trees he's seen.
Yeah.
And I agree with him.
Yeah.
I can't
fantastic.
argue with stuff like that, you know.
Yeah. Does this one need some work before you display it, and what would that work be?
Well, we would probably, dress up the top dress
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and put some moss in and so on. The foliage. Ponderosa pines are always going to have long needles.
Yeah, not much
And we
avoiding
do
that, huh?
succeed at getting them shorter and shorter, but it's always a compromise.
Yeah.
And it's a big enough tree that it can wear those needles
Yeah.
fairly well, I think.
Yeah. And
Jack Weichel is a very dear friend of mine. Bruce Baker introduced me to him
oh yeah,
34, 35 years ago.
and I'm sure Jack talked about Bruce when I talked to him 2 years ago. So
Yep. When I took my trip to Japan in 2016,
yeah.
Jack and I roomed together.
Did you really?
Yes.
Oh, he
and
is
he and I
something else.
have roomed together at bonsai conferences all over the United
Oh,
States.
wow.
Pittsburgh, Washington, D.C.
Sure, sure.
You name it, we were there together. Kalamazoo. He and I have done bonsai presentations together.
Have you?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
He was
an
he
awesome
was a
man.
joy. Oh, he turned 90 that year. They had that big
Yep.
fundraising celebration or something
That was
year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Yeah, right.
He just turned 92 in July.
92 in July. That's right. Yeah, phenomenal man. That was a highlight of my trip.
Watch through the trees here.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna see it. There's a bronze horse,
Oh, I saw it before
Oh, you
you
did?
told me to point
Okay.
to it. Yes, that
Yes.
horse.
30 feet tall. That was designed by Leonardo da Vinci.
Seriously. But he didn't sculpt it, of course. So
No,
he designed it.
He designed it, and
Point out that distinction.
Well, you know,
cool.
it sounds like an obvious statement, but you know, maybe they kept it in good shape
But
for 100. and
Frederik
200.
Meijer
Yeah.
got into cahoots with people in Italy, and they created two of them. One is here.
One is here.
The other is in Milan, Italy.
Oh my gosh. From everything I've heard in the last couple of years, Michigan has quite a bonsai scene. So are there a lot of active clubs throughout Michigan? Is there Grand
is.
Rapids a pretty active one? I mean,
there's
people
West
meet
Michigan.
here, don't they?
West Michigan Bonsai Club.
Yeah.
We meet here every third Tuesday down in the classrooms at Meijer Gardens.
Yeah.
That's one of the nights that they're open till 9 o'clock.
Okay.
So they're from 7 to 9. We
Yeah.
welcome newcomers to someone that wants to join the club if you have questions.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's we're doing a really cool program right now that was called Bonsai Journey, and the concept was we purchased a bunch of junipers that were already started as a bonsai but still in a nursery pot.
Yeah.
Purchased those from Brussels, and we didn't sell them to make any money. We just passed on the same cost to everyone.
Yeah.
And then every class they bring it in, and we talk about it for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And the concept is like, hey, you get a tree, but for about 2 growing seasons, you will have what you're looking for.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when you go to a bonsai club meeting and someone styles a tree for you,
Yeah.
you go home and you're like, well, what do I do now?
Yeah, right.
So I wanted to really focus on we have to learn how to grow, design.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just buying a tree and then see you later.
Right. Yeah. There's a little care and maintenance involved.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, without that,
Yeah.
you got a tree, you don't have a bonsai.
Well, there's another ginkgo with a nice trunk. I don't see ginkgos with nice trunks. I mean, it's not a behemoth trunk, but that's always good to see. Some of the ginkgo trunks can be really odd from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So this is fantastic. Another slender tree, but has elegance.
Thank you.
And that, yeah, it's an elegant tree, and I love that.
Yeah.
It's simple but elegant.
We've got a picture of this from I believe it's 1962 or something. Bill Valvanis. We acquired that from him. 2015, something like that.
He's got his trees that are going to Chicago next week, and he's got them all in his driveway. You know, these trees that have been in a pot for 50 years, and they're some of the white pines he has, and they're going to Chicago for this show whenever.
Okay.
What is it? Next week or whatever? The
Probably,
second
yeah.
or third week in
Middle of
August.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how closely does an Austrian pine resemble a Japanese black pine? As far as
They're
how
different.
you care for it.
Way too very different. Yeah.
Very differently.
Yeah.
Are they a one flush pine?
Yes.
They are, but so we use Austrian pines in the Japanese garden
Sure.
because honestly, it's one of the close that mimics a black pine to a certain point.
Yes.
The needles are quite longer,
Yes.
but it thrives here in Michigan where
Yeah,
pines
which
don't.
is why we chose them for another Peter T event.
Most of them
And they're-
here, we prune them in June.
Okay.
They've all actually did a secondary flush.
They did do a second flush.
Awesome.
That
Okay.
is-
I think it's pretty this is a weird year, but you
Right.
know, it's really cool to walk around to all of our black pine, or excuse me, Austrian
Austrian pines and to see another.
secondary flush.
Yeah.
But this one, was nursery stock. Bruce Baker had it. He gave it to me in probably 1995.
Okay.
I donated it to Meijer Gardens probably 2001. We'd have to check the records on it, but it's been here ever since.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And Bruce actually worked on it a couple years ago, so it kind of went full circle with him. Yeah.
Full circle. Got our large forest.
Yeah. Gene Deasy, does that name mean anything to
That
you?
does not ring a bell at all.
He was a dear friend. He died a few years ago.
Oh.
This was his.
Gene. No, I don't know that
Eugene
name.
Deasy.
Eugene Deasy. Okay.
He was a retired physics professor,
Oh.
and he's the one that taught me about physics. That he said, you know, Dean, he said, entropy is not what it used to be.
What is entropy?
Oh, I get to educate
You got to educate me on entropy.
All right, entropy is the fact that everything has a tendency to deteriorate,
Okay.
and time moves in one direction.
Okay.
If you drop an egg, it breaks.
Yeah.
It's never going to be back together again. It doesn't work that way. And that's what entropy is all about.
Okay.
And so, therefore,
Entropy.
why should entropy be the only thing in the universe that does not deteriorate? I mean, that's just sick and wrong thinking.
It's morbid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, yeah,
Entropy.
entropy ain't what it used to be.
What it used to be. I've been educated. I love it. In more ways than bonsai. I love that.
There you go. Pretty much everything here has got at least a little bit of my stink on it.
Okay.
Okay. That is the ponderosa pine that is, you mentioned the literati down there. Yeah. This is the other one of that pair.
Oh.
And this is the,
And that was going to go in the ground?
yes, they were going to use that as a landscape tree.
Thank goodness you said something.
And I said, oh, hell no.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Steve and I talked about this tree for years, trying to figure out what kind of a pot to put it in. We couldn't find a pot.
Yeah.
We looked and looked and looked, couldn't find a pot. Finally, one year, about 2010, I said, look, Steve, this is March. I'm going to be back in April. I'm going to make a pot.
make a
I said,
pot.
I've got an idea, a brainstorm up here. I haven't made it happen yet, but I'm going to. And this is it.
That's
and I brought it down, and we put the tree into it. Steve loved it. The CEO took the tree to a staff meeting that very day.
Really?
And everybody went, wow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've made probably 50 bonsai pots out of New York bluestone.
That's fabulous. Hey, that could be a workshop, Minnesota Bonsai Society. I don't know. That could be a workshop idea. I've been surprised at, in my journey, the number of literati Japanese black pines. I've actually been surprised at
Really?
that. Is that relatively new, or is I just not paying attention before?
Seems easy.
I can't think of an example of,
Someone who doesn't have several.
I mean,
Okay.
I have a starter one, but that's just because I bought a bunch.
Well, then
and
I'm
like,
coming to the wrong houses. No. No, I don't know why, but
You're looking for a literati?
No, I saw a lot, you know, in DC at the National, and the places I've been,
Really?
I've seen these literati Japanese black pines, and I just have not seen a ton of them. And I mean, certainly in Minnesota, there's none.
I think we're just starting to learn the really good techniques to make a real powerful, strong Japanese black pine. And for so long, it was you grew it,
Yeah.
and since they're on the more difficult side to get it to backbud anything lower, once you kill out that lower branches,
You're going to literati.
you're going to literati. And
Yeah.
I feel like, and I don't have a ton of years experience. That's the difference
Right.
between Dean and I.
Right.
He's got a lot of history.
well, and I'm better looking, so.
That helps.
So there's that. I live in Traverse City,
Okay.
and I come down, well, these days, used to be about 10 days out of the year. Now it's more like 20 or 24
Oh, yeah?
days out of the year. And for instance, the 2 days I'm here now is to create archive records of the trees that we have for the long term.
Yeah.
They realized when Bruce died that, you know, that Dean, he's probably going to die someday too. So we probably better milk him for what we can get while he's here. The
really?
cones on jack pine will stay on the tree for 40 years.
Really?
If you find them out in the wild, you find,
They've been there for all.
yeah,
long
you
time.
count
I don't-
the growth rings back,
Yeah.
and you'll find cones
You'll
that are
find cones
40.
that are still there.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
phenomenal.
The growth rings will eventually push them off,
Yeah.
but yeah,
But 40 years
Yeah.
of hanging around, that's pretty cool.
yeah.
Fascinating.
And so I've got,
So you have a couple of
I
jack
have a
pine.
couple jack, and the cones, some of the cones are as much as 10 years old.
So what have you learned about your jack pine caring for them and making sure they're beautiful?
Is there
Make
anything?
sure they stay healthy. Don't.
Gee, that's kind of
Don't-
true with a lot of trees, isn't it?
What's that?
Keeping them healthy.
Yeah.
That's every tree,
Yeah,
right?
that's always step one, isn't it? Because if you don't, if they are vigorously healthy,
Yeah.
viciously healthy,
right.
you can basically do anything you want to with them, and it'll just piss them off,
They're gonna-
and they
but
come
then they're
back
gonna
with a
respond.
vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna recover fine if they're healthy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if they're not going to recover.
Yeah.
So Ted, I guess between the two of us, we make a fairly decent tour guide.
Yeah. The main structures were built in Japan,
Oh, were they?
disassembled and reassembled back in the U.S.
Get out.
And
Wow.
This
look
was
at the
built in
joinery.
Japan.
Are
There's
these the kind of buildings where there's hardly any nails in them?
Yep.
Exactly.
There are
That's why I
certain
said look at
things
the
that
joinery.
You will find nails, but that's just because they had to really kind of keep up with U.S. codes.
Oh, sure. Yeah, leave it to our codes, right?
Yeah. Doesn't have to make sense. That's just how we do it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, that one summer of 2014, I think it was, because we opened in 2015.
Yeah.
The whole summer they had about 35. Well, it varied. It was a kind of a bell curve. But
Yeah.
They had as many as 35 Japanese carpenters here, working full time,
Putting it back together.
They rented a house and they all stayed there and
Wow.
worked here many hours a week. And yeah, they did the copper roofing.
Yeah.
That's a special skill in itself.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
wow,
all
very
copper,
sleek. Yeah.
sheet copper.
What's that top? Is there a function to that top or just part of the design?
I can't speak to that.
Yeah.
Steve could probably tell you.
Huh. Oh, fantastic.
But then also the posts they're elevated so that the rainwater drains off
It's gonna-
and it dries out.
it's
and
gonna dry out
doesn't-
much quicker.
Doesn't rot the post as quickly.
Yeah.
And
Smart.
all of the
All of the base of the whole
Yep, they're
structure
all
is on a
elevated.
granite frame around it, like.
something
Footing.
stoneware, yeah.
The fence around the bonsai garden,
Yeah.
we had that redone because they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And since it was built in 2015, the posts were already rotting. In the
Really?
ground. So we had them pulled out. We have a Japanese carpenter that we hired to come in to take care of anything.
Sure.
And he did a cement because that's just U.S. regulations.
Yeah.
And then a rock, and there's a special technique that you carve the post to sit
So
on
it's
the rock.
sitting on the
beautifully.
rock.
Yes.
So it's plumb with the rock or flush with the rock on the cement.
And
Oh,
I
that-
hear a lot of like the old temples in Japan are all just sitting, I'm going to say floating, on a rock.
on a rock.
And that's what keeps them lasting so long because
Again, they're
where
not
the post
rotting.
rots
Yeah.
is in the ground.
Is Bill Valvanis just collected a really old, 40-year-old plus barberry stump that was growing somewhere. I don't know where he was, and he said, "Can I have that?" type deal. You know, an urban Yamadori kind of story. Trunk's about this big, and it has like a cork bark on it, like so textured and deep. And he air layered it successfully. He grabbed two. One has a flare that just looks like it's any other like really nice Japanese styled tree at the bottom, and it's a barberry.
Wow.
Very interesting.
This is the point in the conversation where somebody says, "Okay, now I know you're lying." That don't happen. No, I mean I believe you.
Well,
but-
right, it's crazy.
yeah,
When
it's not-
he had one of his, he couldn't find the one with the nabari that kind of swelled down and showed that bottom thickness and girth, and the volunteer went, "Oh, this one," and it's in a pot, and it literally it's a barberry bush, and again with this really deep textured bark, and of course they have some really pretty leaves, and they're relatively small. And he's like experimenting and growing a bonsai out of it. Whereas he's very artistic, and he obviously
Oh, yeah.
very traditional guy, but he's thinking outside the box too. That's kind of cool. Yeah, we've had koi at the Como Zoo in St. Paul for as long as I've been alive, and so I've always had a thing for koi, and I have a pond in my backyard with a few koi in there. Awesome.
What now?
See the Don Redwood on the right?
Oh, yeah.
Forest?
The
Yeah.
forest right there, that mini forest.
So he's
That's
kind
wonderful.
of agreed to let me have it, but he's not ready to give it up.
Yeah, that's very cool, and I love that it just naturally began there.
And it's like it's really working itself out. It's got smaller, it's got a little bit thicker. You know,
Yeah.
Look at that.
Well, and you can visualize the roots are growing back into this nooks and crannies
Yeah.
in that rock,
Some
in
of
those
them
rock
coming
layers.
straight down.
This is the thing that they were building at the time those two ponderosa pines were going to be landscape trees.
Landscaped up here.
Yeah.
And you said no way.
Yeah.
We're going to overstay our welcome here. Bring us back and we'll be on our way. I don't come back without the camera.
Well, it looks like you've got some fun material to sort through and edit down. And
I do. I have a lot.
with.
I have a lot of stuff, and it'll be really fun to do.
keep you out of the saloons for a while.
For a little while, yeah. It'll keep me.
We didn't even go into the children's garden. It's a place in itself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet. Have either of you two been to Longwood?
I have not.
the Longwood
You've
garden?
been there, haven't you, Ted?
Longwood?
Longwood Gardens?
Oh my gosh.
Pennsylvania.
That is in Pennsylvania. Yeah, that is another place where people just got to get out and see some of these places, man. If you're not from Michigan or from there, you just got to go there just to see it.
Back in the plant room, what a fantastic trip we had. Thanks again to Aaron for doing all the videography so I could just show up and just do my thing with people, which is what I loved about this trip, just talking bonsai. And Ted and Dean given 2+ hours of their time, not just to show us about the bonsai, but the sculpture garden, some of the history, the buildings, the things to go see there, and just their time and their kindness, generosity, and we had a lot of fun, as you can tell, a little bit of laughter going on there. So if you have time and you're near Michigan, please go see Frederik Meijer Sculpture Garden and the Bonsai Collection and see some fantastic works. Okay, an intro to the show, and I'm already a little bit tired, so back to the couch I go. Maybe I'll watch some really wonderful bonsai videos from all of you. Until the next one that I can create, take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and we'll catch you soon on the next one. Hopefully, when I'm feeling better.